Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We hope you all are in good health and safe. Since we all are coming from different time zones, we welcome you all for our in house well being series on the topic Rethinking on Unemployment and Career Wellbeing. This is Ramya Tulsi, and I have with me dear friend of mine, Talibul Islam Rupam, as co-moderator of this webinar. Today's webinar is planned accordingly as 20 minutes of our speaker's presentation, and then we have 35 minutes of for question and answers and conclude the session with final note and photo session with our speaker. We are happy and honored to have you, Ms. Bian Li, founder of the Hungry Lab, as a speaker for our today's webinar. Hello, Ms. B. Uh, Before further proceeding, I would like to give a brief introduction about Reimagining Society. Reimagining Society is an international youth-led organization which endeavors to create an inclusive, fair, and sustainable communities by holistically imbibing the concept of well-being. It heralds to move forward a self-centric philanthropic citizenry by designing solutions to the world's most pressing issues through a comprehensive well-being education program. It also aims to establish economic empowerment through social connectivity among the youth. The Reimagining Society believes that the synergy of innovation, dynamism, partnership, and human development fosters a unique change. So, for our viewers, let me introduce our today's speaker, Ms. Bian Li. B is an entrepreneur, multiple TEDx speaker, global speaker, futurist, and former investment banker at the intersection of finance, operations, technology, and social innovations. With 15 plus years of experience working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, innovators, and change makers for all sizes across 30 countries. She is now the founder of the Hunger Lab. She specializes in unlocking and unlashing the potential of individuals, teams, and organizes for greater innovations, collaboration, and impact to solve critical global challenges related to UN Sustainable Development Goals. She is a board member and advisor to a diverse array of startups and social entrepreneurs, and also a mentor and guide for many initiatives and startups. For her work, Ms. B has been recognized in a variety of countries. Most recently, in 2019, she was recognized as a 40 under 40 leader for Southern California, as well as Karamveer Global Fellowship in India, a National People's Award for Citizen Partnership with UN and International Confederation of NGOs. Before giving the floor to the speaker, there is a small note for the participants as well. Now you can confirm your presence at any moment during the program by filling out the attendance form. We will be receiving from 15 minutes before the program starts, and it will be closed after an hour when the program ends. Please note that the e-certificates will be provided within 1 week, whoever will fill up the attendance form. The form will be available only in the customized group. The group link with proper guidance has already been sent to the email to all the participants thrice, including today. You must have to find the group link from your mail. An e-certificate will not be provided if anyone misses to fill up the attendance form during the program. Kindly check the promotional or spam folders if the mail has not been found in the primary folder. By not taking much time, Reimagining Society is honored to have a well-experienced and well-reliable person on board. We welcome you, B, on the floor, and the floor is all yours for next 20 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ramya. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to talk about this critical subject. So I speak all over the world around future of work, future of learning, education, and well-being, because everything is connected. And I think, and I love talking to youth, especially because, young people are the future. And right now, I get so many messages from young people all over the world, students, entrepreneurs, who are very anxious about the future because we live in very, very uncertain times, especially with COVID and all the volatility that brings. So how do we actually prepare ourselves for a future? And we live in a world right now where things are changing so fast. Technology is changing so fast. We have lots of social challenges. We have lots of environmental challenges. And we have a future full of supposed crises, right? But then crises is also an opportunity for us to reinvent and reimagine the future. And that's what I want to talk to you about in terms of how do you begin to think about the future and create your own pathway for it in a way that is holistic, in a way that takes care of your well-being, the planet's well-being, and also looks at the impact that you can make to create a better future for yourself, your family, your community. So there's so much to cover, and you know, I can talk about days and days and days about this, but to really sum it up in 20 minutes, I want to share some slides with you, and I want to present some important concepts, okay, as we think about the future. So am I able to share my screen? Is it possible to share my screen, Ramya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So these are just a summary of some key concepts, and I'm happy to go over them in detail afterwards. So, you know, I want you guys to think about when you were a child, when we think about employment, right? Everybody, our parents, friends, teachers, they ask us, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? How many people have been asked that? I'm sure all of us have been asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, okay? That is actually an old, outdated question. The way the future is moving, we need to actually ask ourselves a more important question, which is, how do you want to be when you grow up? Has anybody even asked you, do you want to be well and happy? Or do you want to be a doctor or engineer? Right? And so when we look at how do we want to be, it requires us to think bigger and to think much more in depth about the future that we're creating for ourselves, starting with ourselves, and how do we actually get ready for this fast-paced future. So just a little bit about the Hungry Lab. What we do is we are preparing youth, startup students all over the world for this very uncertain future. And how we do that is actually through our integrated holistic program. And what I want to focus on today is looking at all of these concepts as a way for you yourself to apply to equip yourself for the future, right? And it starts with what we call incubating your ikigai. Now, ikigai is a word, a Japanese concept meaning a reason for being, okay? And essentially, it's what you want to really focus on to live a long and fulfilling life, right? Rather than just get a job and, you know, be miserable. And especially now with the, you know, the way AI, there's lots of anxiety about AI and automation taking over your jobs. That actually is going to free up our mind space and our heart space to allow us to actually do more human-centered things, which is actually what we're meant to do. We're not meant to be doing the boring, tedious stuff that machines can do, right? So that means understanding how you want to show up in the world and how you can step into your uniqueness. And ikigai is a concept in which you can do that when you think about the future and how you want to show up. It's the intersection of what you love to do, right? Which is your passion, what the world needs, which is your mission, what you can get paid for, which is your vocation, and what you're good at, which is your profession, right? And that is how, if we want to think about us living a fulfilled life in the future, right, where we're thriving and not just surviving, ikigai is a good framework for us to examine that. Now, to understand who you are, it requires you to have self-awareness, introspection. All of these are important future skills for the future. And in order to do that, you have to dig deep within yourself and understand the connection between your physical body, your mental wellness, mind, body, soul alignment, right? Which is why we created the Healing Lab, because we are working with so many students and entrepreneurs and executives who are so stressed out and so worried about the future and many things, and they were unhealthy. They were depressed, they had anxiety, and mind, body, soul is very connected. And so it's important in your own personal growth and development as you evolve, as you grow up, that you think about it in terms of your full wellness, mind, body, soul, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental health, right? And then when you look at your future, you want to think about what skills are you gaining, which is why we have the field of future skills, right? The future skills, the hard, soft, and meta skills. Meta just means like your self skills that will enable you to adapt, right? It's not just about learning about AI and blockchain and all the emerging technologies, but it's also looking at the soft skills that are going to take you further, right? And when I talk about soft skills, let's look at the growing future skills that the World Economic Forum has actually talked about and said that these are growing, right? Life skills, learning skills, and leadership skills, right? Analytical thinking, creativity, originality, problem solving, systems thinking, reasoning, systems analysis, emotional intelligence. These are all important skills that will help equip you for whatever career you want in the future. And 65% of children born today will end up in a career that has not been invented yet, right? So the future is actually very open, and because it's so uncertain and open, it requires us to accelerate our mindsets to a much more open mindset that accepts ambiguity, that accepts uncertainty, and actually thrives on it, because we know that we can essentially regenerate. And that's why we created the Regenerator. And this is why this is where we help people from all over the world with jobs, employment, and reskilling, right? Because it's not just about applying to a job board anymore. It's about reinventing your skills and packaging you up as a unique value to be added, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to get a job, right? And it's about how quickly you learn. That's another important thing and a skill that employers are looking for. It's the future of learning, right? Things are changing so quickly that we need to be constantly learning. And the future, as Alvin Toffler, who's a famous futurist and author, said, the future will depend on us, on our ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? What we learn in traditional schooling sets us up for a particular type of society that is no longer going to be relevant, right? And we need to reframe our mindsets to do so and be open to that. And by 2022, everyone will need an extra 101 days of learning. So we really need to think broader in terms of not just what we want to be in the future and how we want to be. And so when you look at that, this is, you have to get out of your comfort zone when we're thinking about preparing yourself for the future employment, preparing yourself for future entrepreneurship. It's going to require us, the future is going to favor people who can go out of their comfort zone, overcome their fears, learn, right? Because the future is about learning and grow from that, right? And so why wellness and career is so important is that you need everything aligned, like I mentioned earlier, mind, body, soul, to face the new types of challenges that our world and our planet and our society is going to face, right? So this is a future landscape, and I draw this in terms of a forest. I think about the world as a rainforest, right? There's a soil, there's the trees, the animals, the water, everything has its place. And rather than expecting, like the traditional school system has up till now, expect everyone to be the same type of seed and be the same type of fruit and work in the same environments, that's no longer true anymore. And so we have to be able to create the environments, and we have to know ourselves enough to know which environments we are going to thrive in, because we're not all apple seeds anymore, right? There's so many different kinds of seeds in the world. And so you've heard of people talking, and I do a lot of talking about the fourth industrial revolution, right? That's just the future of doing. You hear about, tech, work skills, how technology is going to transform the future and what kind of jobs, employment is going to be available. That's just the tip of the iceberg. What you don't see in the soil, and that's where it's so important, because the soil is where the seed grows, and all of you are seeds with the potential to grow just big and strong. To thrive in the future of doing, we need to focus on the future of learning, right? Because for all of the future skills that we need to learn, we need to actually know how to learn to do it, right? And it's the cognitive revolution that is going to drive the industrial revolution, right? And if you look at the future here, this is the future of all of these things that are happening right now: changing education system, changing workplace, global connectivity, right? AI automation, climate change, all of these issues. And what that means is we have to think holistically about our well-being, not just in terms of how much money we're making in our employment, not just how much money our advancement opportunities, but think in a more holistic way. Are we actually happy? How do I want to show up? Am I doing something that is going to be fulfilled, that is using my ikigai, that is where I am learning, where I have the ability to learn, and the job is not going to be placed by a machine and I have to start all over, right? And that requires us to fundamentally shift how we show up as people. And this is what I call the future of being. These are and it starts with knowing yourself, the self-awareness skills, the meta skills, that the emotional, spiritual, physical, mental skills that are going to be so crucial for allow us to rise to a better version of ourselves so that we can prepare ourselves to learn to do. Does that make sense? And so this is what the future holds. And it requires us to essentially think bigger, think broader, and it starts with the mindset, right? And then if you want to think about the future as so many different kinds of problems, well, we need lots of problem solvers. So it's not going to be enough where you just go and get a job. Yes, obviously, that is going to happen, but there's going to be more people, more competition, less jobs, and we can't depend on the government or anybody to give us a job, right? I talk to a lot of governments and they're very, very, very scared, especially in developing countries where there's such a young population. Right now I live in India and it is a very young population, and I'm from California in the US. And it's, the demographics there are changing, and I work a lot with our partners in the Middle East. In the Middle East, it's a very young demographic. And you talk to everybody there, they're all worried about youth unemployment, right? Who's going to take care of people if we don't have enough jobs to go around? What are they going to do? And so entrepreneurship and investing in young people and new ways of making a living and making a livelihood are so important, in addition to just helping people get jobs. And so that's why we believe that, I always encourage young people to think like an entrepreneur. Even if you don't want to run your own business, the skills and the mindsets that you learn when you think like an entrepreneur will translate and serve you well no matter what you want to do. And so this is how, if you think about our integrated system, this is how you should think about yourself as an individual system, right? Who are you? How are you? Where are you? Where do you want to go? How will you get there, right? What is your voice? What is your uniqueness and your strength and your superpowers? How you essentially, this is what we call the 6 Ps. And as you embark on a career search or thinking about what you want out of life, think about it in terms of these 6 Ps. What is your purpose? What is your potential, right? How do you create an actual pathway so the dreams in your head and the aspirations in your head don't go to waste, that you actually have a pathway from idea to reality, a dream to reality, right? How do you sustain yourself, right? How do you make a profit? Because, even as an NGO, even as a charity worker, you need to ensure that you eat, that that you are financially sustainable, that your organization that you're running is financially sustainable, right? Because that's the only way that it will continue to go on and help more people. And how do you create a pipeline in the future in which we actually are able to forecast and anticipate future risks, future opportunities, right? And lastly, how do you utilize your passion in a way that inspires your lifelong journey of learning, doing, making an impact, and being a better version of you, right? And all of these work together no matter what you want to do or whatever career. And when you are fulfilled in this, when all of these align, when you find your ikigai, you overcome your fears, you align mind, body, soul, then your well-being is at a much higher level. And if we can all do this, imagine how much brighter society can be, right? When we think about how happier people make happier societies, and when we're including, a happy planet, when we're including thinking about others, because we've learned how to we've thought about how the planet is going to be impacted, then we can create a much better world. And this is what I talk about when I talk about moving from resilience to regeneration, okay? And, resilience, you hear that word a lot. And that's important, right? But that's, we're already falling behind if we just talk about resilience, because resilience means accepting the punches, right? If I get hit, how many times can I get back up? That's good, but that means you're implicitly accepting the status quo. That means you are accepting the current system. But the current system is what got us into trouble, is what caused all these problems in the first place. So now the future and your generation is at the perfect crossroads to completely wipe the slate clean and regenerate. Just like in the rainforest, Mother Nature, after fire burns everything, it regenerates itself, right? And that is the important concepts and frameworks that I'd like for you to really think about. And I've probably gone over 20 minutes. I've got a lot more to share. But this is just something that I wanted to just whet your appetite and allow you to think in terms of your future. And and this is another way to think about it. If we talk about the building blocks of the 5 Vs, right? Where do you want to go? Think about it in terms of what is your vision, right? You don't want to just play. I play chess, and I grew up playing checkers and then chess. And you think about checkers is just one step at a time. But chess requires you to see the much bigger picture and move several steps ahead. And that's what we need to go from playing checkers to playing chess, for us to be able to prepare a better future for ourselves and then create a better future for society, right? And it starts with, how do you create a vision that works for you? Where do you want to be? How do you want to be in 10, 20, 30 years? What impact do you make? What kind of problem do you want to solve in the world? What kind of world do you want to build? That's that big vision, right? Because you need your why. You need a reason for persisting and continuing to overcome setbacks. And the why, the big idea, the vision is what can help you when things aren't going to plan. What is your value that you bring, your uniqueness, your superpowers, your own strengths, right? And how are you different than everybody else, right? In a world that is trying to make you the same as everybody else, the biggest struggle is to be different and to love and accept yourself and be able to understand what you bring to the world, right? And vitality, health, right? Your capacity to go beyond what you thought you could do, to surpass your own expectations, the feasibility of doing it, and your mind, body, spiritual, emotional, mental, physical health, the vitality of you, right? And also the volatility. We live in a real world with real issues, real problems, and real challenges. So how do we have to learn those skills, and this is where I talk about those future skills, to be able to forecast risk, to be able to understand opportunities and trends, both negative and positive, right? And to create a plan for us that works in spite of all of these risks. And then we have to look at the visibility in terms of, how do we actually look at a much more strategic, much more holistic, and a systems level perspective in relation to our own place in society, where we're going, where society is going, so that we can make the impact that we are meant to make, that we can be the best us that we want to be, right? And so we need to have visibility into the future. And that requires us to open our minds, open our hearts, to learn from a completely new clean slate and relearn and unlearn. And so those essentially are some of the key concepts that I want to share with you related to how are you going to create and stake your own claim to the future. And want to leave you with something. You know, in school, we think about, it's an anxious time, right? And I get a lot of messages from young people. How do I cope? I'm depressed. I have anxiety. You know, we do a lot of work with them in our healing lab for that wellness part. But a simple tool wherever you are around the world, when you're by yourself and you want to help yourself, I say, remember your ABCs. ABCs is a very simple but effective trick. If you keep getting into the habit of doing that, you'll be able to start rewiring your brain for a much more positive outcome, right? And that positivity is going to translate over time into how you show up better in the world. And ABC is just very simple. Just remember, aware. When you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling, like you're going to panic or very stressed, right? Just be aware, just be mindful and actually take a step back and observe your thoughts. Like, let's say you're having a lot of negative thoughts, right? Observe, right? Don't reject the thoughts, because then whatever you reject persists, right? So just be aware and ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling? Okay, where am I feeling it? My heart's fluttering, my palms are sweaty, I'm feeling very nervous. Okay, that's okay, it's okay. Just be aware, right? I'm thinking this. Okay, all right, observe, right? Be like a objective observer of your own thoughts, right? And then it's important to breathe. Breath, in yoga, you learn pranayama, which is so, thousands of years old and is so effective. But even just on a more simpler basis, breath allows us to get more oxygen into our brains. So it signals to our brains that we can get out of fight or flight mode, because when you're taking short breaths, you're panicking, your brain goes into fight or flight, right? It activates your fight or flight response. So you're not able to make good decisions because you're panicking. So when you breathe, you allow more oxygen to the brain. The brain gets a signal that, hey, you're chill, you're relaxed, you're settling down, you don't need to panic. So then it goes to your frontal lobe. So then cortex, so allows you to get into your executive functioning, right? And make better decisions. And so breath is really important. And, I can talk about life force and all of that, but just breath is very important. And then put your hand over your heart, right? And just close your eyes and just feel the compassion that you have for yourself, right? We are our own worst critics. We're always worried, well, will people think? It's natural to think, oh, will people judge us if we do this? Oh, I'm not meeting my parents' expectations. I'm not doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's okay. Have compassion for yourself and say that I'm loved and I love myself, and why. And share and give love and send love to your friends, to your family, right? To even somebody who might have hurt you in the past, but you forgave them. Send your compassion to the world, send your compassion to the planet, to the environment, right? And once you've done that, notice then, are you breathing slower, more relaxed? Are you more calm? Are you having more positive feelings, right? And are you not panicking anymore? Or are you not as anxious? Are you feeling better, warmer, more positive? So that's just a quick 1 to 5 minute exercise that you can apply wherever you are, whenever, at whatever time of day, whenever you need to. And it's very simple, and that's something that I want to, let you take away. And I'd love to hear from you guys and invite you to join this global movement that we're building for a regeneration. You guys are the regeneration. Young people are the regeneration, rebuilding, reimagining, reinventing, reshaping society for a regenerative future. And so that's the link below, thehungrylab.com/join the economy. And I'd love to, it's a form you fill out to join our community, and we'd love to have you with us. And so that's it, and I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Vi, for your enlightening and engrossing presentation. I believe our audience is actively participating with us. Now we are going forward to our QA session. Before moving to the QA session, I would like to remind our participant about the attendance process once again, thereafter obtaining the e-certificate. So now you can confirm your presence at any time during the program by filling out the attendance form. We are already receiving your response, and it will be closed after an hour when the program ends. Please note that e-certificate will be provided within 1 week. Whoever will fill up the attendance form only. The form is available only in the customized group. The group link with proper guidelines has already been sent to you in your email. You must have to find the group link to fill up the form from your email. And e-certificate will not be provided if anyone misses to fill up the attendance form during the program. Kindly check the promotional and spam folder if the email has not been found in primary folder. Well, Miss D, it's like incredible. Your session is like completely learning and very inspirational. So let's go forward with our QA session. So let's start with the first question. And we have Bian Li with us. So the first question is, the prospect of for the second quarter of 2020 remains dire, with the latest ILO report that describing that the decline in working hours of around 10.7% relative to the last quarter of 2019, which is equivalent to 305 million full-time jobs. What are your thoughts on the unemployment pre and post COVID-19 and the changing scenario?
Okay, the unemployment numbers were already, the economy globally was already going through a very interesting period even before COVID. As with all economies, there's always peaks and troughs and recessions and peaks. And so we're clearly headed for another recession even before COVID. COVID just accelerated many institutional and systemic issues that proved why the system is currently not working, especially for the folks at the bottom of the pyramid, the people who are like the daily wage laborers, the people who are the most vulnerable. And obviously, it's going to differ between countries depending on the benefits and how the country has managed it. Being an American and seeing what the US is going through and the unemployment issue, 1.2 million just applied for unemployment last month, right? And it's getting worse, and we're going to continue to see this going up and down, lockdown, reopen until everything stabilizes. And so it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it's also accelerating the path in which we're progressing. And that I like to stay positive on that, because it's accelerated digital transformation at a rapid pace, when everybody was saying before, oh, we can't go online, we can't do meetings online, and now it forced everyone to. And you see a lot of companies announcing that they're making the work from home option permanent now for the workforce. So it is transforming workforce, especially office jobs. As for the wage workers, the people that require, a physical presence, that is still something that is very difficult, especially now in the US, especially where teachers are being forced to go back to school in unsafe conditions. And so we're going to see more and more of this volatility as we go ahead. It's anybody's prediction how long it's going to be. The more that people protest and don't want to wear masks, the longer we're going to have to all suffer. And so it's going to require the full participation of everybody, right? And until we have that, we're not going to see stability anytime soon.
Well, that's a great insight. To relate this question, I would like to ask another question. How can international organizations like UN, IMF, World Bank, ADB help in reducing and preventing the damage to the economic fabric, especially in maintaining employment opportunity?
The small business and agriculture is what drives most economies, especially developing economies, right? The small business is the backbone for most countries. What they need to do is really create an incentivization scheme to get small businesses back on track, right? And because those are the most vulnerable, those are the people that, especially the micro, small, medium entrepreneurs who don't have access to traditional banks, who don't have access to traditional financing, but yet still provide crucial services, employment, and are the backbone of most economies. So they need to create programs that can empower and fund these businesses, as well as train them to get online, to help future-proof them, to allow them to adapt to this new future, because a lot of them are also failing because they don't know how to get online, right? And so it's education, it's training, it's funding, and it's prioritizing, right? Why, in the US, right, if you think about it, the average individual citizen only got $1,200 US, but your average corporation got billions in relief, right? And they pay zero taxes. So it's about the priority. There's a saying that the budget is a reflection of a country's priorities, right? Any organization, the budget is a reflection on your priorities. And so what are we spending on? Where our priorities should be? The immediate thing is to get small business going, help them adapt to this digital age post-COVID, and help them get their business up and running safely with a greater connection to the market, and get consumers more optimistic about spending too, because it's all related, right? You're not gonna survive if you don't have enough demand and people feeling safe enough to spend. And if they feel they have to feel safe enough to spend, they need to feel like they have money to spend, right? If you're unemployed, you got laid off, you don't have money, you're not going to spend, and that business is not going to get that money. And so it's a vicious cycle. But if we can spur small businesses to keep going, if we can actually increase and invest in the most vulnerable, wage workers and people who are actually keeping the economy going, we're going to start seeing some foundational stability. And that is going to be positive for everybody.
Well, precisely, you are right. And that's actually an informative answer. So we hope that our youth and the people who are facing this problem can look into that solution. So let's moving out on the third question we have. So do you think the pandemic has drastically affected employment of women in a negative way? And what are the challenges and opportunities faced by female entrepreneurs? And I guess this is a very perfect question to ask you.
So there are several aspects to this. And also, again, it depends on which country you're living in, right? Some countries are better for women than others. We have to look at it. It's not, pre-COVID, it was still the gap. Let's talk about startups, for example, and investment in startups. Females still disproportionately got funded less than men, right? Female representation was less. And so they had less support. So obviously after COVID, they're still going to get, the residual effects of the pre-COVID inequality is going to transfer over to the post-COVID. Now, actually, what we're seeing is there has been a resurgence or a surge, not a resurgence, a surge in attention being paid to female entrepreneurs. More female investors are getting involved. And the social justice component of what happened during COVID with George Floyd, with all of these other social issues, have created a place where a lot of these social diversity inclusion issues, gender, sexual orientation, religion, race, all of these things are being talked about, and people are putting money into investing in underrepresented businesses. So that's has been a positive outcome from a negative event. There still needs to be a lot more to be done. And one negative consequence of COVID is, with so many women stuck at home, they have not been able to earn for their family, as well as they're being subjected to, rates of domestic violence have become much higher when people are locked up in COVID. And that is not just in developing countries. In France, the domestic violence went up by double digits for women during lockdown. So these are the realities that women have to deal with. Men also suffer from domestic violence too, but I'm just talking about statistically, women are the disproportionate victims of domestic violence. And so it is, so in addition to unemployment, we first need to look at, are women able to be even, are they even surviving? Are they even being able to have a lifestyle where they don't have to worry about their basic needs, about basic safety, basic security, right? And so that's where we are right now. And women, unfortunately, just given how the world has historically been, will bear the residual effects of this, an unequal society. But the opportunities and the attention and the awareness, given this whole social justice, surge, is creating more awareness, investment, and deployment of resources to where it's needed. And the more people talk about it, the more we destigmatize many things. Women also suffer from a lot more mental health conditions than men, in terms of like postpartum depression and other things when they have to run a household, because they do more housework. And they also have to run, do their job, and they also have to take care of the kids, and everyone's stuck together, and they're victims of domestic violence. Obviously, you're going to have more mental, situations than people who are in a healthy environment. And so all of these are interrelated. And so we have to tackle the most fundamental issues that women face first to allow them to move up.
Wow, that's outwardly a very good answer, and with lots of information. Since you are talking about domestic abuse and domestic violence, so I would like to inform our audience, like we are having a in-house well-being series. So in this month, we are going to have another webinar dedicated to domestic abuse. So please stay tuned with us through our social media platform. We'll be announcing the date soon. So Bian Li, I guess like people will work on these things, and the female will overcome these challenges and establish themselves. So let's go towards the next question. And this is a kind of interesting question because you have already mentioned about the academia and their role in employment. So do you think the current school curriculum adequately equips the young people and skills required in the job market?
No.
So
and it's obviously, it again depends on the country that you're in. The Scandinavian countries are much more advanced in that, and also but for the most part, traditional schooling, and I want to make a very important distinction between vocabulary. So I use schooling as very different than education. Many people use them as the same word, but they are not. As the author Mark Twain would say, I never let my schooling get in the way of my education, right? And so education is all around you. You don't need to go to school to get an education. I'm not saying that schooling is bad. Obviously, school is good for many reasons. But in our society accepts school as, an indicator of moving up and employment and all that. But that's also changing too. Elon Musk and, you have Facebook and Google all coming out and saying that they no longer require degrees to work for them. It's all about skills, right? And so anybody can learn skills. There are people that are, I know like this incredible 15-year-old kid in India who is working on AI, and he's now like working with MIT as a 15-year-old, and he hasn't even graduated high school. He actually dropped out of high school, right? So there are so many different avenues now for you to get skilled, and that levels the playing field because you no longer have to spend so much money that you can't afford to go to a Ivy League, go to Harvard, go to someplace and get a degree. And especially now when everything's online, right? And you are able to still get those same skills because you can learn from online. There's so many different classes that are affordable or free. And you do it through practice in yourself, in your own experimentation, experientiation. And so one thing that we do a lot, and I spend a lot of time working with schools and working with startups, accelerators, incubators, and corporates on bridging the gap and that pathway between classroom and the workforce. Students need more time for practical internships, for practical experience where they learn by doing, where they get more exposure. Because if they're in the classroom just learning theory, right, or just learning one way to learn mathematics, right, or one way to learn this, one way to learn this, then we are ignoring their genius. So NASA did a study. It was like a 30-year study of about 1,600 children. And they tested them for creative genius from birth to adulthood. So between the ages of 0 to 2, 98% of those children tested as creative geniuses. By the time they reached their 30s, only 2% of the same children tested as creative geniuses, right? Society,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Now I'm saying that I'm actually learning this information actually, and you're going great. And like, do you think do you have any other recommendation to remedy this scenario, academic?
First of all, especially with government, public schools, changing the curriculum takes so long. Bureaucracy, right? So bureaucracy is a huge issue. India has actually made some steps. The CBSE curriculum has actually stressed about life skills, learning skills, leadership skills, future skills, 21st century skills, as they call them, right? So that's optimistic because, you know, bureaucracy here is also a big issue. But it's also changing the mindsets of educators and teachers, because there's so many teachers that are afraid to change how they do it because they've always done it this way, or they're afraid that their jobs are going to be replaced, right? Or they're afraid of whatever. That is a huge mindset shift that we've seen and observed and encountered in real life, consistently wherever we are, the resistance to change. So we need to get over the mindset of the educators. And there are amazing educators who have come to me and said they are fighting with their peers, with their colleagues, because they are seen as the black sheep of the faculty for wanting to do something new, right? And so, but we need to work and collaborate and you know, accelerate what these inspirational teachers are doing to want to help change and to help students move forward. And so it requires us to invest in better teacher training. And that teacher training requires mindset training. And that mindset is really hard to change, right? Especially if you've been teaching something the same way for 20, 30 years, and then somebody suddenly comes in and says, you have to teach it a new way or teach a new topic that you haven't been trained on. Obviously, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of resistance. But slowly, if we continue to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, then they'll see the rewards and the rewards will speak for themselves. Another thing that we're seeing, and we're working with a lot of startups on, is providing those experiences. So startups now, because they have not, many startups, especially in emerging countries, have not been able to hire the local talent that they needed, especially like AI companies, for example. You know, they've complained that it's hard to get AI developers locally. And because the schools are not training AI, curriculum. And so what they're doing is they're actually now working with the schools and providing placement opportunities to get these young people in early as freshers to get the experience so that the startups train them themselves. And at the end of their schooling, they will then be able to get a job because they've already learned all of this stuff in direct experience with the startup. And it's a win-win-win for everybody because the schools get to brag that their students got accepted, right? It's all about placement rates, right? And so when you have higher placement rates because you're working early on with corporates, with startups to get these students placed and trained and qualified to be placed, everybody wins. The startups and the corporates get better trained talent, and that saves them money in training, and the students get a secure job with the right skills.
Well, I guess it's a very descriptive answer with lots of insight. And to inform you, B, we have our participants from academia, from multiple countries. So I believe that they will take this information into their consideration. And we have youth also with us during this live. So I guess they will also rethink about your insight. So let's move on to the next question, and it's about recruitment. So,
Okay.
let's ask you. I guess it is a very great question for you. So, during recruitment, what are the basic competency you are looking for in a potential prospective candidate? What makes a candidate stand out?
It depends on what I'm recruiting for. The same qualities for any job that I look for, or anybody that I work with, is, do they have curiosity, right? Curiosity is very important. Wanting to learn and being open to learn. I say the most dangerous phrase to say is, we've always done it this way. 6 most dangerous words. We've always done it this way, right? If you think that, we're just going to continue to do it, and you aren't curious enough to want to innovate and take the initiative to learn and innovate and think of a better way to do things, then that's not someone that I feel is going to be able to adapt quickly enough. So that curiosity and that love of learning is something that I look for. Are you coachable and are you teachable, right? It's not about what degree you have. I don't like to look at resumes, right? Because you can be perfect on paper, but then if you come to me and you can't hold a 5-minute professional conversation, right? Then I can't talk to you, right? And so I don't care what you look like on paper. I want to learn. I want to see. I don't care about your degree. I don't care about where you went to school. I want to know, do you have the self-awareness, the drive, the hunger to succeed, the curiosity to learn, the adaptability, and with that, the coachability and the humility to say, I don't know something, but I'm willing to find out. And that's the coachability and the teachability that allows someone to grow and develop, because we are never done improving ourselves. Our whole lives is a lifelong journey of self-discovery, self-improvement, right? And the minute we stop learning, we stop living. And so those are the critical things that will make an individual successful, and I look for that.
Currently, you are right, I believe. So, and next question is about informal sector. So, you know that a majority of people work in informal sector. And what alternative ways of income should these people seek to survive in this new normal?
The informal sector?
Yeah, it's about informal sector.
Yeah, the informal sector. And the numbers are so skewed because it's so hard to get reliable data, because so much of that is unaccounted for. And so with the informal economy, there still needs to be a shift towards digital for online, right? And how do you join a marketplace that will help you? So in COVID, so actually in April and May, I judged a few global hackathons, working with startups and mentoring them for them to innovate platforms where you could get informal economy, like, the gig economy, just simple tasks, low wage workers, to be able to offer their services online. Right? And that takes creating awareness, because a lot of them don't even know that they have this option to do it, or to take payment instead of online versus cash, right? And so once we open up that world and we can create a marketplace for them to participate in and open up their world to more customers beyond their village or beyond their neighborhood, then it is going to be much better in terms of their opportunities. And so that requires education, that requires awareness and training. And it requires a mindset shift. But in order to do that, you have to help somebody who wants to do that, right? If they're not willing to change, then it's very difficult to help somebody. But that is what we've seen actually works in the real world. And actually one of the startups that I was working with based out of Sri Lanka for one of the hackathons actually won their category for developing a marketplace to help these types of wage workers. And we're seeing a lot of those happen around the world.
Well, that's, I guess, a fantastic answer for this question. And yeah, it's true that, the records of informal sector is not convenient for, most of the countries, I guess. Let's move on youth. You were talking earlier about startup, like social enterprise for youth. So today we see a lot of youth coming up with their startups and organizations. So what is your advice for them to grow sustainably?
I want you to think about how you're going to create long-term value, and think about long-term sustainability within a system, not just your shareholders, not just your investors. So many startups come to me and they say, oh, we need to raise funding. And when we look at it, we say, no, you don't need to raise funding. You need to have a business model, right? You need to have sufficient unit economics. You need to have a vision for where you want to go. The current startup machine or system is very skewed, and everyone will, and I talk to so many venture capitalists and investors who say that the startup investing, the VC model is broken because so much money has been thrown at so many bad economic situations with startups because of hype, because of buzzwords, right? But if you dig deep, it's just very shallow. What we're going towards now and moving towards is redefining, because everyone wanted to be Silicon Valley. Everyone wanted to be a copycat of Silicon Valley, right? That's the old world. That doesn't work anymore. It's failed, right? Forget about that. What we need to do is create localized versions with best practices that have a localized context that focuses on long-term income generation, value creation, co-creation, versus just measuring success by how much funding you got, right? And we need to change how we measure success and how we define success. Because, in certain instances, it's about how many jobs you create for the long term, how many people you empower, right? And if you're financially sustainable, you don't need to be the next Airbnb, right? Not all startups are meant to be the next unicorn. It depends on your context and what you're actually trying to do, and stop comparing yourself or stop trying to be the next copycat. And look at it from your stakeholders, look at it from who you want to serve, your impact, how you want to show up in the world as a startup, right? What is the startup's ikigai?
Well, I guess that's a very useful information, and entrepreneur like me, I guess that will be beneficial information for lots of youth enthusiastic who are trying to develop their startups and make a sustainable goal. So I'm now going to ask the last question from our side. Then we will be taking the applicant's question. So do you see this pandemic as an opportunity to reimagine our potential?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's entirely, actually, my current book is about that, the regeneration, the generation that is going to reshape society. And it's going from to regeneration. And it is a great time, especially because if we're stuck at home, great time to create and reassess. And so I recently was asked to contribute an essay to a book to raise funds for frontline workers and the national health system in the UK. And wow. my chapter was called The Great Regeneration. And I talk about the 4 greats that this age is going to be remembered as. And can we take advantage of the lessons that these greats are going to teach us? First, it's the Great Awakening, right? As we lost our jobs, as we saw the world, as we closed our doors, everything changed. We had to sit with ourselves at home to think about, okay, what is really going on? What am I supposed to be doing here? What is my purpose? Reflecting on what the deeper meanings of life, when we don't need to we can't go to fancy dinner parties anymore. We can't go buy fancy clothes anymore. We don't even need it, right? And all of that stuff. What does that mean to be us, be me, be you? So it's the Great Awakening, and people are now saying, well, there's so many challenges now that I didn't know existed. Now that I know, because COVID has shown this, I want to do something. I want to help. I want to make an impact. So people are awakening to this bigger reason for being, right? And again, how do they want to show up in the world? The second great is the Great Resetting, and that's where we saw when we, stopped the economy, nature, Mother Nature healing, Mother Nature growing back its trees, the animals coming back, the pollution disappearing, and it's a chance for the world to reset. And what are the lessons that we had to take from there? Are we going to continue to destroy Mother Nature after we get back to, after we open up again? Or are we going to incorporate better environmental practices because we've seen the damage that we've done, right? So it's a chance to reimagine a whole capitalism system that is more holistic and takes better care of the future. So there's a principle that many indigenous communities and groups around the world have talked about for many, many hundreds of centuries. And it's the concept of the seventh generation. And the seventh generation is a concept that means, what if I take an action today, let's say I go to the forest and I cut down these trees, right? How will that affect the generations, 7 generations down the line, right? So it forces us to think more long-term. And that is going to require us to have long-term incentivization, because right now, right, our capitalism system, it's forcing people to think in terms of quarterly reports, quarterly numbers, my quarterly bonus, my year-end bonus, short-term thinking. And that causes damage because we don't think about the long-term effects of something, right? And so how do we reimagine the perspective in which we approach the economy and how we work and how we operate, right? Then the third great is the Great Reckoning. As we've seen, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all of these issues around the world with race, gender, sexual orientation, religion. Many of these conflicts are now bubbling up, but they've been because of a system that has suppressed for so long, right? And now people are rising up and saying no more. Are we going to listen? Are we going to learn? Or are we going to just, this new cycle, we're going to pay attention and then forget about it? How are we going to actually take these lessons forward? And so it's a reckoning with ourselves, right? We can't know where we're going and we can't create a brighter future without knowing what we've gone through, without knowing where we come from. And that requires accepting the good with the bad and reckoning all of ourselves and recognizing our sins along with our successes. Because otherwise, if we just ignore our sins and ignore everything bad, they don't get fixed, right? You can't fix what you don't measure. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge. So that's the great reckoning. And then finally, it's the Great Regeneration. So how do we take all of these lessons and rebuild after the fire has scorched the rainforest, right? And how do we find ourselves in a system, instead of being planted all in one row, how do we actually take our own place, right? Where Mother Nature has a place for everything, right? There's soil, there's sky, there's water, there's animals, there's trees. How do we accept who we are and step into our own power and arise to build this? It requires us to know who we are, right? And it requires us to understand our collective and connected humanity and to view it as a system. We don't operate alone. What happens in one part of the world affects another part of the world. So it's the Great Regeneration that has so much possibility. And I'm really excited. And I love my job because I get to work with amazing innovators, change makers, thinkers, doers, dreamers all around the world to make this a reality. And once we start going from shareholder capitalism, right, where you just care about getting a financial return for your investor, and moving to stakeholder capitalism, where you are forced to take the long-term thinking about my stakeholders. Stakeholders are not just my investors or customers or employees. Stakeholders are my neighbors. Stakeholders are the village down the river. If I dump my chemicals in the river, is that going to affect the community and damage the community down the river, right? Stakeholders are the people who are going to be using my products, the suppliers. Stakeholders are everybody in the system. Stakeholders are the environment, the planet. So it's, and now we're starting to see more and more companies come out with ESG principles, environmental and societal and governance principles. Corporate social responsibility is now gearing more towards that, as well as a greater interest in impact investing. So these are all positive things and trends that are helping accelerate the shift towards a regeneration.
Wow, that's wonderful. Actually, I would like to add with your answer, the Reimagining Society. So you and our audience, if you look at our logo, we are also prioritized all the components of the nature, like components like the human, animal, and also nature itself. Because COVID-19 is teaching us that we have to repay our components where we get we get benefit. So yeah, you are absolutely right, and you are actually to some extent you are saying the mission and vision of reimagining society. I think this is the beauty of similar-minded people. No matter where you are, no matter you are from America or like we are from Bhutan, Bangladesh, or Nepal, but we are thinking the same. So that's why actually we have established the reimagining society to make a bridge in this component and work together so that in future we'll have a very sustainable world. So okay, so audience, we have received questions from the applicants who have registered for this webinar earlier. So now I'm asking one of the questions. So it's from Nojoke Rachel Nguo from Cameroon. His question is, should someone accept a job for the sake of passion, even the pay package of the job can't sustain them?
So, you have some people who always say, follow your passion. And, as much as that's good, in theory, we live in a reality in which you need to pay the bills, you need to eat, you need to take care of your family, right? It depends on your individual situation, and it depends on who you need to take care of. If it's just you, then maybe you can go longer without a paycheck than if you had to feed 5 children, right?
Right.
So that is a very unique situation. I'm not going to tell you blindly follow your passion. Passion is great, but you need a way. That's why we have the 6 Ps. It's not just 1 P, passion. It's the 6 Ps, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have to align it with the other Ps, right? How are you going to sustain it? Your pathway, right? How are you going to find, is it your purpose, your profit, your ways to make a living? And it also depends on what is the reward, right? What is that sacrifice? Is it, there's so many stories of startups who they sacrificed a lot. They ate, instant noodles for 3 years, lived in lived on friends' couches, but they knew that the reward they were building for, the why, was worth all the sacrifice, right? And so it sort of depends, or is this just a temporary thing, right? Let's say you want to volunteer, there's no money, but it's your passion and you want to use this experience as maybe for 3 to 6 months to a year to learn, to get experience. So then that you can use it as a stepping stone for something else, right? That is going to be financially sustainable, like to get a better job, right? There's a lot of people who volunteer at something when they get laid off. It's common for people to, when they can't get a job, to volunteer at something they love. And through that, because they're doing what they love, they're good at it. And then through that, they get offered a job, right? So you never know where your next opportunity comes from, but I would, rather than just view one step ahead and view it as passion or not making enough money, view it much 7 generations down the line, view it looking in terms of your long-term view. Is this a temporary thing? Is this going forever thing? Or what are the steps that I want to take to live my most fulfilled self? And is this choice aligned with it, right? And so those are the considerations that I would say.
Wow, that's very interesting and crucial answer, I guess. So I guess it's concern for many people. So before going to the next question, So I would like to tell our live audience, so you can also ask the questions in our comment section. So please put your question in the comment section. We'll be trying to take your question. So our the next question is from Ruth Anastasia Setiwan from Indonesia. So her question is, how does someone handle a job that is supposedly aligned with their values but has a negative environment and people? Should they look for a job elsewhere?
There's a saying that people don't quit, they quit their boss, right?
True.
And so it's the people that make a job. And I've worked in toxic environments. I've worked in healthy environments. I know the difference. And when you talk to people who have been every day subjected to toxicity, to negativity, that doesn't just, make you miserable when you go home at the end of the day. Every day, that adds up. All that stress, that tension that builds up in your system, and that affects your long-term health. Physically, like your body will physically show the negative effects of being in a toxic work environment. So you again want to weigh the balance. Is this something temporary that I need because the pay is good and I can save up enough money so I can pay for university, or I can save up enough money so then I can take care of my kids and pay for college, and then I'll get a better job afterwards? Or is it something that is I cannot stand anymore? When you look back, and always imagine yourself as like, if you're 25 and you're asking this question, imagine yourself giving yourself advice when you're 40. Imagine your 40-year-old self giving your 25-year-old self this advice. Never tie yourself to a company. Never tie yourself to a boss. Never tie yourself to an organization. Tie yourself to your calling, your why. That's why knowing yourself and your why and your purpose is so important, because you don't need to stay at one company to be aligned with your why, right? You don't need to stay with a toxic boss to be aligned with your mission. Even though the values may align, the organization, if you're in a toxic environment, that's negatively affecting your health, your mental well-being, that's going to be a detriment, and it's not going to allow you to show up as the best you in the world, right?
Yeah.
Align yourself with your why and your calling. And when you put out that energy, and you're going to start attracting the right people that are not toxic, right? And if you go in with the mindset of abundance and say, it's okay, I can relinquish this job because I trust the universe and trust my skills and my talents to attract a better opportunity that is not toxic, right? You have to be willing to have that faith and take that leap. And so I would say long-term health effects, toxic environments, bad negative environments are not good. And there are ways that you can align yourself with your values, with your purpose and your passion and all of that, but you're not tied to any specific organization, because organizations come and go, right? No one is just indispensable, right? And I'm the founder of the Hungry Lab, but I'm building it in a way that I am not indispensable, meaning that if something happens, somebody else that'll run by itself, right? And so that is what, and so if no one is indispensable, then why are you making that organization indispensable to you, right?
Yep.
So you hear stories of people who have, spent 20, 30 years loyal to a company, and then just one day, new management shows up and fired, don't care. You were there 30 years, who cares, right? You're just a number, go away. And that happens a lot, and that's why there's so much frustration and people not knowing their identities. They've spent their whole life working with a company, and then at 50, when they feel like they're too old to learn a new skill and get a new job, they get fired, they get laid off, right?
Okay. Yeah, true. So let's move forward the next question. So the question asked by Juliet Warimu Karimi from Kenya. So it is the duty of youth to create jobs for themselves, given the increased number of layoffs accompanied with reduced job opportunities.
Yes, everyone needs to And this is true for anybody. You are responsible for your own destiny. You're responsible for your own future. You can't sit and wait because that day may never come if you're waiting for somebody else, right? That's true for relationships. That's true for work. That's true for your business, right? That's true for your own life. And you have to be able to be responsible for your own well-being and your own future. And that's why a lot of the stuff we do is helping people create their own opportunities, because you can't depend on anybody else to give you one, right? And you can attract people who can support you and guide you, but ultimately it's also up to you to be able to take that opportunity when it comes and see it and recognize it, right? And yes, youth are very much, every single person is responsible for taking the future in their own hands and creating opportunities for themselves, whether it's through entrepreneurship or whether it's through different forms of new ways of employment, or whatever best aligns with you and your ability to make a living in a way that is healthful and a way that you enjoy.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm taking the last question from the applicant's side. So this question is from Tabiso Emelda Itsangbang from India. So what is your take on the trend of technology invading most economic worldwide by replacing human capital?
It's not a black and white issue. People try to make it so, and politicians try to exploit a fear in people by saying, oh, machines are bad, they're going to take over your jobs, or whatever. And you see protests and all of that all over the world about their jobs and people going on strikes and to protect their jobs. That's a very fearful way of looking at the future, and we can't afford to live in fear. Fear holds us back. Fear keeps us complacent and still, and fear is the opposite of innovation. And fear is the opposite of change. And that's rooted in our subconscious. I'm not going to get into too much detail about psychology in our brain and how our brain works, right? But if we're aware that we are naturally designed as human beings with our brain and our subconscious and our conscious mind to go towards pleasure and the known versus the fear and the unpleasurable, then we know how we have a better sense of how we can overcome that and help people move from fear to abundance. If we believe that the world is going to become better because AI is going to help save us time and do the boring, tedious, backbreaking things that humans shouldn't be doing anyways, it allows us to get from our monotonous thinking and mindset to using more of our brain, using more of our being to be creative, to innovate, to do the things that make us uniquely human, right?
Yeah.
Then we're going to see a lot more innovation, a lot more creativity, and a lot more advancement of what society needs.
Okay, that's really cool. So we have to rethink about this and reimagining about that problem and its solution. So now I'm moving forward to take a couple of questions from social Facebook Live. So the next question, I guess this is quite relevant question from Ridhima Batra from India. So her question is, how can we make sure that those who cannot afford technology are able to understand this new digital era?
That requires a lot more government support. I know in India, there's been a lot of talk about, can we just broadcast on the TV? Because most people have access to the channels on TV versus having a laptop computer, right? Or online. Can we broadcast the schools, the classes on the TV? Or how can we get, easy Chromebooks or easy, tablets to underprivileged children? One thing we have to remember that in anything, in trying to solve a problem, even though technology is great, technology is not the only answer, right? You can have something very shiny, a new technology and everything, but if you don't train the people to use it, or you don't have the internet access to get online, to use your fancy technology, then it's not worth it. So basic infrastructure, especially digital connectivity, is very important. Luckily, India has some of the cheapest data costs in the world. I know in a lot of places, and I was just talking to my friend in Ghana, and he was complaining about the cost of data there and the phone plans there, and how working from home costs him so much money for data usage. So,
Yeah, but
in rural places, internet connectivity is really bad. So the basic necessity of that is and a lot of places now are making internet access a human right. So the infrastructure is important, and looking at technology is just one tool, but not as a be-all, end-all. And we need, obviously, practically more government and more corporate sponsorship and support of underprivileged schools, and reprioritizing the education and the training of the educators to get online as well. One challenge, and I know this firsthand from working with schools and colleges in India, is that a lot of the educators are not used to teaching online, and so even transitioning them to online has been a big challenge. So there's many different things that play, but there needs to be a concerted effort from the top, because a lot of this requires funding and resource deployment, and providing access.
Well, you are talking about India. I guess this is a very common scenario in South Asia region, like, access to internet or access to the opportunities. Even though there are solutions, the alternative primary is not also accessible. So that's the one of the problems. So yeah, so we'll be probably thinking about that and coming up with some good solution. So our next question is from Josephat Bunual from Bangkok, Thailand. So the question is, how do we promote the well-being of unemployed people during the difficult economic time?
Like I mentioned, but sorry, how do we prevent the what?
Okay, let me react the question. So how do we promote the well-being of unemployed people during the difficult economic time?
Okay, the well-being. First off, in many countries in the world, talking about mental health is still very much a taboo. People won't admit they have a problem, right? And so the first thing to do is increase efforts to normalize talking about mental health and destigmatize it. So you allow people a safe space to seek help. And that's the first thing, allowing people to acknowledge and talk about it and seek help. That requires sustained promotion, marketing campaigns, education campaigns, and it's going to take a long time, because you can't change culture overnight, right? Existing culture you can't change overnight. So destigmatizing is very important. Is, providing more options for people to socialize. We talk about social distance. I hate that term, because we should be more social now and connecting with people when we're physically distanced, and providing those opportunities for people, as well as ways in which people can, if you have internet access, if you're lucky enough to have that, you can, exercise at home with the community so you don't feel so alone, as well as awareness of where they can get more education and more resources to help them do so. A lot of people lack the awareness to understand how to take care of their health. In terms of, one thing in terms of physical health, the supply chain, the food supply chain in a lot of places has been disrupted. So people aren't able to get fresh produce and other things, or get their medicines, online and things like that. So in anything, there should be a lot more priority in looking at how the governments can work with the suppliers on creating a streamlined and an efficient supply chain so that it's not disrupted. And so it requires a number of different factors. For women, especially, who are facing a lot of stress or increase in domestic violence, there needs to be a safe place where they can, seek help, as well as not be, stigmatized for, leaving the home. There's been many cases where there's been a lot of discrimination from foreign returnees in certain places, or being suspicious of your neighbor, and a lot of COVID fear and misinformation. And so battling misinformation is one half of the battle. People are getting a lot of misinformation about COVID cures and all of the fake news about masks and all of that stuff, right? And so fighting misinformation, destigmatizing mental health taboos, creating more resources where women can, escape domestic violence, being able to provide more free and affordable access to health services, especially for the underprivileged during this time, and more social welfare checks, I think. All of that is going to help.
Wow, it's extremely enlightening session with you. Like the Q&A session is completely, full of insights, enlightenment, and also lots of information. So we are almost at the end of our webinar. So now, before I would like to invite my co-moderator Ramya to keep the concluding remarks and also take the photo session. Thank you so much, Bian.
Thank you, Talibur.
My side.
Okay. Thank you, Talibur, and thank you, Ms. B. Actually, it was very interesting session. As a young student, I'm going to step out in the job market in few months from now. So it is definitely, we could know how your valuable insights on the labor market, entrepreneurship, economy, business, career well-being, education, learning and e-learning, about toxic health changes and mental health as well, and other prospects and aspects on unemployment and career well-being as a whole, which are like really very important to be discussed for the scenario which is going on now. Thank you for taking out your time from your busy schedule and enlightening us with so much valuable insights. Thank you, Ms. B, again. Final reminder for the participants now who are watching us live. So now you can confirm your presence at any time during the program by filling out the attendance form. We are already receiving your forms, so it will be closed after an hour this program ends. Please note that the e-certificates will be provided within 1 week. Whoever will be filling up the attendance form only. The form will be available only in the customized group, and the group link with proper guidance has been already sent to the emails to all the participants thrice, including today. So please check your spam mails or other folders to find out them. And whoever doesn't fill the attendance sheet will not be getting their e-certificates. So please do it properly. So finally, we shall wrap up today's webinar with a photo session with our today's speaker. And it is an invite to all the participants to take a self photo showing their support to the well-being and elimination of, in support of Reimagining Society. I request all the team members of Reimagining Society, please turn on your cameras so that we can have a photo session with our speaker today.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. Done. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So stay safe and stay healthy. We will soon see you again with another interesting webinar soon. So keep connected with us. Signing off for now from Team Reimagining Society. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.